And we're going to start this journey today with one simple verse from James chapter 4. It's James chapter 4, verse 14, and here's what it says. It says, "What is life? We are a mist that is seen for a moment and then disappears." That's an optimistic verse there, isn't it? Our life, what are we? We're but a mist. We're here today and we're gone tomorrow. Imagine your life just going away. And the reality is, in 100 years, probably about 100% of us are going to be dead. It's just going to happen. Someone else is going to be living in our house. Our car is going to be in some junkyard somewhere, an ancient memory. We're not going to be around. Like your life, your legacy, your bank account, your house, everything that you have will be gone before you know it. And you know the adage, you can't take it with you. Your life is but a mist, but a fog, here for a moment and then gone. And you're like, man, ain't this a positive message today? I'm glad I came to church today to hear this. But it's the reality. And we don't really think about it, right? We don't really think about how short our life really is until something happens. Like maybe until a friend dies. And when a friend dies and we have to go to the funeral, and then we're faced with the reality, wow, like life does end. Like, I know that person. Like, we hung out. We have memories. We have stories together. And now they're in a box. And now they're no longer living. And that brings us back to our life to realize, wow, there's going to come a day when I'm going to be there too. Or maybe it's a moment when we go to the doctor and we get a diagnosis. And the diagnosis isn't good for us. And we're faced with the reality that death now isn't something sometime in the future, but death now is creeping and is closer than it's ever been before. Or maybe it comes like on our birthday. Like when we sit down in front of the birthday cake and we blow out our candles. And when we were young, that was like the coolest thing ever, but now it's like torture, right? Another year. I'm surprised I have enough breath to blow them out. There's so many on there. We find ourselves in this place. Or maybe we don't really think about death until we put ourselves in a position where we could have a premature death. And that's sort of a story I want to share with you today. It happened about 2 weeks ago when I was in Alaska. I was there visiting friends and doing different things like that. And they have a son in the family where we stayed. And his name is Chase. And I got a picture of him. He's the guy with the fur hat. You know you're Alaskan if you're wearing a fur hat, right? And this is like the outdoor guy. I don't know if you've ever gone out with the outdoor guy. That's what this guy was. Like, I equate him to that dude like Bear Grylls from Man vs. Wild. I mean, this guy could survive like eating reptiles under rocks for the rest of his life. He's just this amazing outdoorsman, far greater than I would ever be. And he came up to me when I was there and he said, "Greg, do you want to go for a hike?" Now, mind you, when he said that, I have an Arizona mindset when it comes to hikes, He has an Alaska mindset, which I realize is quite different from an Arizona mindset. So he said, "Do you want to go for a hike?" I'm like, "Absolutely, man. Let's go for a hike." And so he picked me up with this other guy, and we went out for a hike. Now, when we got out of the car, I had like a North Face jacket on. It's like 60 degrees, right? And I'm like, man, it's sort of hot. Do I even need this jacket? He was like, "Where we're going, there's going to be snow." I'm like, "What? Are you serious?" He's all like 4,000 feet up is what we're going to hike. I was like, "All right, dude, I'll keep the jacket," right? And we started this trek up the mountain. Now, as we're going up the mountain, he gives me an option. He said, "Do you want to go down the normal path or do you want to go the waterfall route?" Like, I love waterfalls, man. I'm like, that's a no-brainer. "Oh, I want to go the waterfall route. That's the route I want to go." But remember, I'm thinking in an Arizona mindset, not an Alaska mindset. So we reach this part of the trail where we have to deviate one way because we're going the waterfall route, right? And so we we turn around this corner. He's a little bit ahead of me, right? Because that's how he is, because he's the mountain man. And he reaches this spot where I see him from a distance, and I snap a photo of what this waterfall route was all about. Now, mind you, you can't see the other half. It's that times 2 is the waterfall. And you're like, "Oh, yeah, that's not really big." Let me show you my man Bear up at the top. You see him right there? Now look at him in perspective to this waterfall. This was a serious waterfall. And so this is the trail. This is the waterfall route, right? That I was like, yeah, let's do the waterfall route, right? This is it. And you see Bear, like he's out there right on the total edge, 200-foot drop, and he's just standing there. I went that same route, except I look like this, like up against the thing, like, don't look down, Greg, don't look down, Greg, don't look down, Greg. I made it, and we actually went past that waterfall. We went around the corner, and we get around the corner, and the waterfall just continues right up this crevasse, you know? I mean, it was just beautiful. It was awesome. And we stopped there to breathe in life. Like we talk about Hemingway and poetry. Bear sits down and smokes a pipe. I mean, it just reeked in manliness. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever had that manly moment. I felt extra manly in the midst of that time. I'm like, this is awesome, right? So we keep going on, and then we start moving again, and the trail ends. And I'm like, what's going to happen? We got to go back, right? Bear reaches up to the side of the mountain, grabs a rock, and starts climbing up the side of this mountain. Now I'm looking at him like, what are you doing? This is the trail. That's not a trail. That's a mountain. This is how we got to go. And so he starts climbing. The next guy starts climbing. And I'm sitting there. He looks like a bearded Spider-Man. And I got no idea how I'm ever going to do this, right? But I have to do it because I need, I don't want to lose my man card. And so I reach up and I start climbing up this mountain. And I'm bringing up the rear. And I got to tell you that this mountain, it was filled with loose rock, because what happened was the glacier went through this area, broke this mountain up into all this rock. You can see like all these rocks, some big rocks, some smaller rocks. There's all kinds of rocks. And so it's sort of like shifting sand as you're walking and climbing up this mountain. Now, we reached a place as we were climbing up where we had to cross from one side to the other side, sort of across the mountain, and it was on a cliff, okay? This is like a 200-foot icy waterfall death cliff, all right? That's where we were. Now, we're sitting there on the side, and we have to go across there. Now, Bear takes off, looks like a mountain goat, right? I mean, just like goes right across, makes it look easy. The second guy, a little bit harder, but he makes it across. And then I start my way across. Now, I had my hands and my feet are on the side. Actually, I had 6 point. My knees were down there too, as I'm trying, and I'm moving. Now, mind you, right at my feet is the cliff. Right over the cliff, 200 feet, death, rocks, waterfall, bad day, all right? And I start moving, and I'm on rocks, like loose rock, all right? I'm not on cement or anything great. I'm on loose rock. And so I start going across. I make it probably about 12 feet across, far enough where I can't reach that side, and I can't reach that side, and I'm positioning myself up on this like hill, this cliff, and this hand starts to shift. Now, in that moment, I know if one more thing starts shifting, I'm just going to slide right off like a conveyor belt, and I'm picturing myself dead. I'm picturing this in my mind. And so this hand starts to slide, and I don't know what to do, but I know I got to do something. So what I do, I just lay down on the mountain, like 12 feet across. Like I figure if my whole body is touching, I'm going to do better. Now, it was a little embarrassing because the two guys are looking at me, right? And I'm like giving it a bear hug to the side of this mountain. I mean, it was very embarrassing. But, I didn't know what else to do. I just figured the more my body I put on the hill, the better off my chances of survival were. And I got to tell you that if you're ever in a situation like that, thoughts of death cross your mind. I was picturing my death. I saw my death. And I started talking with God, because that's what you do when you're about to die, right? I mean, you start talking really fast. And I'm going to tell you, I've been in scary situations in the past, places where I thought I was going to die, but I've never cut a deal with God until I was up on that mountain. I'm like, come on, God, we got to do something about this. What did I do to you, And I'm like, come on, Lord, I got a daughter cooking. I'd like to meet her face to face. I don't really want to die here. I'm thinking my wife is going to be really mad at me when she finds out I died out here today on this hike. She's not going to be happy with this. And I'm thinking all these things to the Lord. And I don't even know how I got it. But see, I ended up mustering up enough strength to be like, I'm just going for it. If I'm going, and I ended up shimmying myself, and I made it to the other side of where this cliff was. But see, in that moment, when I was on the cliff, I was truly tasting death. I really was doing it. And I got to tell you, that idea of tasting death, for me, it was a gift. Because even as I faced death, I wasn't scared. Even as I faced death, I wasn't scared of death. All right, like the plummet into the rocks, into the drowning in the river, that was a little scary. Okay, I mean, that side of things. But the reality of dying, it didn't really scare me. Because I know that I have my faith in Jesus. I know that there's going to come a day when I'm going to breathe my last breath on earth and my next breath is going to be in heaven. I know that my Lord went to prepare a place for me and that I will be with him one day. So I knew, so that side of death didn't scare me. Just the pain did. But that part of dying didn't scare me. I was able and willing to embrace that in that moment. Now, let me pause the story there because I think that's a good thing for all of us to really consider. Because maybe you've been in a situation like that, and you've had a moment in your life when you've had to think about the reality of death. You've had to think, I may die right now. What does that mean? What crosses your mind? Some of you may have not had that opportunity. But I want to ask you that if you were clinging to the side of an Alaska mountain getting ready for your death, what would cross through your mind? Would you have peace? Would you be okay with that? Would you be scared? Would you be fearful of what the next breath after your last breath on earth would look like? Would there be an assurance in your heart and life? Now just think about that question for a minute, and we'll come back to it. Let's go back to the mountainside, right? So after I nearly wet myself on the side of the mountain, I ended up continuing the journey. We continue. It's still horrible, right? But I'm not on a 200-foot cliff about to plummet to my death. I would have to slide a little further over rocks before I would die. And and he continues to climb, Bear does, up this mountain. And I remember he's up ahead of me, and I'm about to reach up, and he looks back at me, and he says these words. He says, "Don't worry, Greg. Just grab a hold of the moss." The moss. Like, you guys remember moss. Moss is slippery, right? I mean, isn't that what you always heard? Be careful of the moss. Don't slip on the moss. Now, this is my lifeline. This is what I have to hold on to keep breathing. My existence is in moss. So I did, right? I grabbed onto it, white knuckle, and I reached, and I'm pulling it out, but I'm still climbing up this mountain, and I'm just working and working and working. I'm making it all the way to the top, right? And I get almost there. I'm about maybe like 3 feet away from the top. They're already at the top. They're sort of waiting for me, but they're like hunched down, and they're really, really quiet, and they're pointing over. And I can't see what they're pointing because I'm about 3 feet down. So I'm like shaking on the side of this cliff, but I got to look at what it is, right? And so I get up on my tiptoes as I'm looking up. And as I look, I see a mountain goat there. Now, what you have to know is that a mountain goat is a very elusive Alaskan creature. People will go out searching mountain goats for weeks and not find them because they're very crafty. They don't want to be around people. I'm 3 feet away from a mountain goat in the midst of this moment. I mean, it's like right there. And I'm going to be honest with you because what came through my mind was, are you serious, God? I got through this cliff, this loose rock, the moss to the top, and now you're going to bring some kind of ram here to knock me off the mountain? What did I do to you? I literally thought that. I don't know. Luckily, the Lord did not bring the mountain goat to knock me off the mountain, right? So I'm looking at him. He's looking right at me, and then he turns his head, and he goes, and he starts going down the mountain next to me. Now, they didn't get this thing on. They didn't have their cameras out or anything, and I'm like, I have to get this mountain goat. I have to do something. And so I reach, and I'm literally ready to die for this picture, all right? If I fall, I fall, right? And so I reach down, and I grab my iPhone out of my pocket, and I'm hanging on the side of a cliff, right? And I bring it over here like this, and I'm like, this is not picture-worthy, and I slide it over to video. And I clicked, and I took a video, and I have it for you today. Here, check out this video as I'm clinging for my life on the side of an Alaskan mountain. Thought he was going to knock me off there. Kept going.
It's crazy.
It was crazy. Well, I got to tell you, after that, I made it to the top. I reunited with the trail, and I left the waterfall route as a memory and a story, but probably not a trip I'm ever going to take again. But it left me with a thought in my mind, a reality that I had that I really needed to share. You see, the assurance that I had when I was facing death on that mountain, I want many people to have that assurance if they ever find themselves in that situation. In fact, if you're ever hanging for your life on the side of an Alaskan mountain, I want to make sure that you understand assurance that comes from Jesus Christ. To understand that if you face death, that you can know without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus has prepared a place for you. And really, I think for many of us, we're on one side or the other. Either you're here today and you have that assurance, and that's awesome. And my question to you, if you have that assurance, is are you sharing that good news with other people? Now, many people would simply say, no, I'm not sharing. And I would say, why? And they would say, I don't know how. Let me tell you, sharing your faith is one of the simplest things that you can do, and we're going to learn how to do that today. On the other side, though, maybe you're here and you're like, I wouldn't have that assurance. I would fear for my eternity. I would fear where I would end up. I don't have that. Well, I'm going to share something with you today that by the time you leave today, that you can have that assurance in your heart and in your life. And it's going to come today from one simple verse from the Bible. We're only going to look at one verse today.